U.S. Army Pacific hosted its training exercise in February near Fairbanks, Alaska. It's a multi-week training exercise involving over 8,000 troops. Hi, I'm Chris Piniella, and I'm a defense reporter with Business Insider. I was invited to come and oversee the training for a couple of days, talk to troops, embed with the Army, and get a good sense of what the 11th Airborne Division was doing up there. Soldiers throughout the training told me how this was like unlike anything else they had ever experienced, an environment that they had not fought in before, an environment that they felt like was trying to kill them. When I was in an interview with Major General Brian Eifler, who's the commander of the 11th Airborne Division, he was telling me that the reprioritization of the Arctic as an environment to prepare in was because they were identifying that Russia had a lot of strategic interests in the Arctic, especially in the next 20 to 30 years, involving commerce, trade routes, potential natural resources and minerals, and that the Arctic could be a place for strategic competition because of that. So the JPMRC training hosts a variety of exercises from paratrooper jumps to attack helicopter runs. On the ground, they're doing artillery runs and also working on like larger wargaming between the two brigades within the 11th Airborne Division. Just before I arrived at the training, they had done what was described to me as the largest attack helicopter run and training in 11th Airborne Division history. The size of the fleet that was flying, as well as the run that they did, it was a 150-mile deep strike, which basically means that they were given coordinates to go target and strike that were 150 miles away from where they were taking off, and that required maneuvering through the environment, through the forest, through the open terrain and the mountains, as well as simulated enemy air defenses and enemy fire as well. One skill set that troops really needed to have was the ability to land the helicopter in the snow. The snow starts to furl up and surround the attack helicopter, and that can cause what troops described to me as whiteout. You can't see beyond the snow, and it can be really difficult to safely land the attack helicopter in that moment. So troops need to be prepared to navigate that whiteout and have the skill set to land it safely, regardless of their visibility or not visibility. So during this training, paratroopers from the 11th Airborne Division were conducting various missions involving loading into aircraft and jumping into enemy territory. It sounds terrifying to those of us who are not paratroopers. Once they've landed safely, claim the area, so they make sure that there's no enemy forces there, they make sure that they have secured the land that they need to secure, and then they stake out and wait until they're reinforced with other troops. So it's a really complex process for paratroopers. They described it as exhilarating, exciting, but also kind of a stressful situation because there's multiple steps to making sure that it goes successful. And then on the ground, troops were running artillery and also conducting a larger sort of wargaming exercise with no live ammunition, no live guns, anything like that. They're not firing at each other. It's basically larger, kind of like fancier Army laser tag, where they're navigating the territory, trying to take enemy land while not giving up their land, and having missions and objectives throughout that. The soldiers who are manning artillery or hauling artillery, that's their only job, right? They're maneuvering the large, heavy, hefty pieces of artillery, these large guns, all around the battlefield. A lot of their job at first, troops told me, was waiting for coordinates or a position that they could go place artillery in. And then once they got that coordinate, they would swiftly move over there, find the place that they're supposed to be, and then start to set up the gun. The biggest risk that soldiers face in the forest is uneven ground. They could easily step into an unsuspecting hole. The ground could be hard in one area, soft in one area. And if you're maneuvering yourself, your gear, maybe other things, other equipment through the forest, it can be really difficult to navigate if the ground is uneven. The clothing that soldiers were wearing in the Arctic really depends on what their preference is. A lot of troops told me that they prefer to be comfortably cold because in the heat of the moment, in the heat of battle, adrenaline's rushing, they're sweating, they're moving a lot, They didn't want to have to remove a layer or overheat in their various layers. A lot of this training appeared to me to be about innovation, about figuring out what works in real time. A lot of equipment can't survive these sub-zero temperatures. A lot of equipment drains batteries, drains fuel, and that can alter what is being used on the battlefield, what's being prioritized, and it can also lead to new technological developments. The Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center training in Alaska allows the Army to prepare for potential conflict with any of its adversaries in the Indo-Pacific region, whether that be China or Russia or North Korea. So the Pentagon has long identified China as the US's pacing challenge, meaning that its military buildup and its ability to control or potentially control territory in a combat scenario is starting to pace or get close to pacing the US's ability. Every year, the US releases a China military power report, basically detailing what's going on in China's military, any capabilities that should be concerning. And this past year's power report was really clear on the buildup of China's rocket force. Some of their stockpiles were doubled, some of their launcher numbers were doubled, specifically related to missiles, long-range missiles, missiles with estimated ranges that could go across the Indo-Pacific region and target US forces in Guam or Japan. And I think the US is very concerned. That means that the US wants to prepare to not only deter China from any sort of military activity or combat in the Indo-Pacific region, but also wants to be prepared to fight in case war does arise in that area.